Before I talk about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off and my very mixed feelings towards that anime, there are two things that I think are important to mention. First is that I will be discussing spoilers about this anime. Anyone who has seen the anime will understand why. It's very hard to talk about this anime without mentioning some spoilery things. And second, I think it's important that I tell you my own experience with the Scott Pilgrim IP, as I believe a lot of people's reaction to this anime will differ greatly depending on their own investment and experience with Scott Pilgrim. My first and almost exclusive experience with Scott Pilgrim is the really good Scott Pilgrim vs. the World film made by Edgar Wright. I really like this film, but it's also a film that I've only seen once, and that one time was a while ago. I've never read the original comic book, and I've played about 5 minutes of the game. To say that I am a Scott Pilgrim mega fan would be completely untrue. However, that's also the reason why I was excited about this anime. It seems like Scott Pilgrim fans have been begging for an animated series for a long time, and it looked like they were finally getting the adaptation they always wanted. On top of that, I was excited to watch it because I'd always heard how the original comic book was actually better than the movie, and the movie is awesome. One of the most visually unique films I've ever seen, and even though I've only seen it once, the film has stuck with me all this time. So if the comic book was as good as people said it was, and if Scott Pilgrim Takes Off was a faithful adaptation, then I was surely in for a treat. And then the reviews started coming in for this anime. I did my best to avoid reviews for this anime, mainly because I didn't want to be spoiled, and also because I wanted to make up my own mind too, but a few did trickle through and a picture began to form. Critics, on the whole, were very positive in their reception to this anime, which I did take as a good sign. But one thing I kept seeing in their reviews was that this anime was a great reimagining of the source material. Now to me, that could mean anything, and in my head when I sat down to watch this anime on Netflix, I thought to myself, well, I doubt this will be a one-to-one of the original comic. I mean, most anime don't adapt everything from the comic. Plus if there are any changes from the comic book, I probably won't notice them anyway. Oh. Okay, I think even I can realise that's not how that went in the comics. Before I discuss my feelings on that bait and switch any further, let's talk about all the objective positives. For starters, the animation is incredible. Science Saru are a great and in my opinion often overlooked animation studio. They animated the Anime of the Year winner Devilman Crybaby, which I'll admit I don't actually like. If you want to know why, then I'll just say that I didn't like the last episode, but everything else before it was really good. They animated the extremely well received Keep Your Hands Off Isaacan, they animated the much less well received Japan Sinks 2020, they did a couple episodes of Star Wars Visions, they animated the Heike story, they animated the apparently really good Tatami Time Machine Blues for Disney, and they've also done films like Inu-Oh, Lu Over the Wall, The Night is Short Walk On Girl, and Ride Your Wave. Regardless of critical reception, their high quality animation has never been in doubt, and their involvement with Scott Pilgrim Takes Off was what really cemented my excitement in this anime adaptation. And in a case of history repeating itself, regardless of critical and fan reception, Science Saru have produced another stunningly beautiful anime. The other major positive of this anime is the voice acting. I'm someone who alternates between watching dubs and subs for my anime. It is nice to have an anime where people won't tell me off for watching it with the English audio. It's also really nice that they got the cast of the film back for this anime. As far as I'm aware, everyone returned for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. This should be a major positive, but I was a little apprehensive of the decision for one reason. A lot of really good actors are just not good voice actors, and vice versa. Some actors have the chops to pull off both, but some voice actors can't cut it as live action actors, and some actors can't recapture the magic when it comes to voice acting. I assumed most of the cast would make it work, but part of me was expecting there to be at least one voice to let the whole thing down. I'm happy to say that every member of the cast delivered strong performances. Some of the standouts for me were Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona Flowers, Satya Baba as Matthew Patel, Brie Larson as Envy Adams, Chris Evans as Lucas Lee, Kieran Culkin as Wallace Wells, Aubrey Plaza as Julie Powers, Jason Schwartzman as Gideon Graves, Johnny Simmons as Young Neil, and Brandon Ralph as Todd Ingram. So pretty much the entire cast was standouts. However, my favourite performance has to be Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim. All the actors, to me, were able to recapture the magic of their live action performances. Michael Cera's performance, on the other hand, actually seemed to improve in the transition to animation, which is saying a lot because of how good he was in the film. It's also one of the reasons why the bait and switch has irked me so much. because I know that Michael Cera would have absolutely nailed a proper adaptation of the source material. Yes, we are now returning to the story of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off makes the interesting decision to, instead of being an adaptation of the source material, be a sequel/remake to both the comic book and film. On the one hand, if you're a massive fan of the comic book and film, and are deeply ingrained into everything Scott Pilgrim related, then I believe that you will absolutely adore this anime because it expands on the Scott Pilgrim universe and provides new Scott Pilgrim content after many years. From switching the focus from Scott to Ramona, you get a better look into her character. It was also interesting to see her deal with the evil exes instead of Scott. It allowed the exes to be more than just boss battles and become actual real characters. Some of my favourite moments in this anime was just watching the evil exes hang out and do random things, and getting more information about who they actually are as people. However, on the other hand, if you're like me, someone who isn't heavily invested in Scott Pilgrim and was looking forward to watching a faithful adaptation, then you'll probably be disappointed and may not even like the anime. It doesn't help that even in the anime, I think Scott is the best character, and a much better lead character than Ramona. Both characters are flawed, but Scott is fun to watch. Ramona is too purposely distant from everything for me to connect with her. Their romance also has less of an impact in this anime because they spend such little time together, and again, as someone not invested in everything Scott Pilgrim, I wasn't invested in their relationship because I didn't really know about how their relationship was meant to play out. I never really bought in this anime that Ramona would fall for Scott. Another issue is that Brian Lee O'Malley hopes the viewer realises that Scott is a bad guy. Unfortunately, it's hard to do that when he's missing for so much of the anime. Also, that spotlight which now shines on the rest of the cast only serves to highlight their flaws. Ramona is just as bad as Scott in my opinion. She does bad things to people. She even does some of the same bad things that Scott does. Scott may be an ass, but my sympathy and empathy towards the rest of the characters slowly disappears when not a single one of them is upset that he's dead, like not even a little. His funeral basically turns into a rave. Wallace is a great character. Anytime he's in a scene, he is the scene. But the way that he treated Todd in this anime made me think that he was a dick, and likely not a nice guy. That's also ignoring the fact that Todd cheats on Envy like it's nothing. Matthew, Gideon and Julie are all confirmed to be evil. Scott's sister doesn't even seem to care about him at all. If I was meant to come away from this anime thinking that Scott was a bad dude, that didn't happen. Instead, I ended up coming away with the belief that most of the cast of Scott Pilgrim were bad people. The only nice characters were Knives, Steven and young Neil. The more I think about this anime, the more I think I don't like it. I want to like this anime, but that might be why I feel so mixed about it. Because outside the bait and switch, this anime does have issues. Primarily, its pacing. The pacing in this anime is sometimes really fast. Certain moments in this anime feel really rushed, especially during the finale. That also probably led to me not loving the show. I also didn't like the music in this anime. The opening is definitely not one of my favourite anime openings. Like humour, music is subjective. And down to my subjective taste, I did not like it. I know this video has been very negative about something that you might love, and I know that you can make the argument that the comic book and film exist, so I can always check out the original story whenever I want. But Scott Pilgrim Takes Off wasn't what I was expecting, and I don't think that it was unfair of me to expect it to be an adaptation of the source material. As far as I'm aware, the marketing led us to believe it would be. A lot of people, myself included, are hostile to bait and switches because it's not usually a pleasant shock to be misled. Perhaps it's because I also watch a lot of anime, so there's so much for me to compare it to. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I was being tag teamed by both Pluto and Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Scott Pilgrim would have to be a genuine no-flaw masterpiece compared to them. In the end, it wouldn't surprise me if Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is one of those shows where my opinion flips on it in a few years, but right now I think my disappointment is overshadowing any other feeling that I have towards this anime. If you're a mega fan that has read the comic, watched the film and played the game, then you'll like this anime. If you've never watched anything Scott Pilgrim, then don't watch this, you won't get it. And if you're someone more in the middle like me, then your opinion and feelings on this anime could vary massively. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is not the anime I expected, and as I figured out, it's also not the anime that I wanted. If you like this video, then please leave a like, it boosts this video's chances in the YouTube algorithm. Definitely leave a comment. Whilst on the whole the reception to Scott Pilgrim Takes Off has been positive, it has also divided people, so I'd like to hear your thoughts on this anime. And if you're feeling really generous, then do subscribe. I'm hoping to hit 400 subscribers before the end of the year. Anyway, that's all for today. Bye bye.